Can't see it.
Do you guys... Hey Dave, where's the missus tonight? She's had a good family thing. She couldn't have... Well, that's why you're a good advertiser. You didn't start yet, right?
Before we begin, we are required by law to remind you of the location of exit doors around the perimeter of the hall. As you face the stage, you will find an exit on the left and on the right. To the rear of the hall, there are two exits, one at the top of each aisle. Please be aware that your closest exit may be behind you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Warner. I'm very proud to be president of Rhode Island College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight, and particularly to our flagship performing arts venue, Zappensley Hall at the Nazarian Center. We've hosted here countless music, theater, and dance events, as well as speakers like Holocaust survivor Eva Kor, the Providence Journal's Public Occurrences series, and even the Rhode Island Senate when COVID precautions prevented them from meeting at the State House. I want to thank our partners, the Providence Journal and the Public Radio, as well as all 5 candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. Rhode Island College is proud to host this candidates forum. It is our duty and privilege as an anchor institution for the state to provide a place where the public can hear directly from the candidates for the highest office in Rhode Island. I also want to thank our moderators, Ian Donis of the Public's Radio, Patrick Anderson from the Projo, and our own student, Raymond Bakari, who is editor-in-chief of our student newspaper, The Anchor. I also want to extend our gratitude to the technical staff here at Rhode Island College for making the magic work tonight. Thank you all. As well as all the staff at the Public's Radio and the Projo who helped make this event happen. Finally, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. Informed, engaged citizens keep our democracy strong. And this kind of spirited public discourse is essential to the health of our state, our region, and our nation. Thank you all, and welcome.
Welcome to this special live broadcast and digital stream of our Gubernatorial Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. Rhode Island voters will decide the state's next governor when the current election ends November 8th. The 2 main candidates are studying contrast. Democratic Governor Dan McKee is a lifelong Rhode Islander who cut his teeth as the mayor of his native Cumberland. Republican challenger Ashley Kalus is a businesswoman and a newcomer to Rhode Island. This evening, in a forum co-sponsored by the Public's Radio and the Providence Journal, will explore many of the key issues facing the state and how the candidates propose to address them. In the first hour, we'll hear from the Democratic incumbent, Governor McKee, and his GOP challenger, Ashley Kalus. Later this evening, we'll be joined by the other candidates on the ballot for governor, 2 independents and a libertarian. We're coming to you before a live audience at Rhode Island College in Providence, and we're broadcasting on 89.3 FM. We're also streaming this event, which you can pick up on the providencejournal.com. I'm Ian Donis, political reporter for the Public's Radio. I'll be be joined in asking the candidates questions by Patrick Anderson, State House reporter for the Providence Journal, and Raymond McKee, a student journalist at Rhode Island College. Before we start, I want to ask our audience to remain quiet until the end of our forum, when you can express your support for your preferred candidate. We also ask that you do not display signs during the forum. The focus here is on the candidates, what they have to say, and it will cut into their time if there are distractions. Candidates, we're looking for a lively discussion. There are no strict time limits, but we have a lot of ground to cover, and we will interrupt you if you go off track and do not answer the question. So let's dive right in. Education is arguably the most important economic issue facing Rhode Island. Despite that, the state has mostly spun its wheels on improving public schools for more than 20 years. Today, there was just another report by the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council underscoring the crisis in public education. Mr. McKee, we've heard you talk about how education has been a hallmark in your life. Ms. Kalus, we've heard you say how you want to be the education governor. There's no need to repeat that right now. Instead, tell me, what specific steps will you take to ensure that we're not in the same situation 4 years from now? Let's start with Mr. McKee.
Yeah, so first, thanks to Rhode Island College and President Warner for hosting us here tonight. But yeah, you can't just start from that question and you have to go back in terms of, let's talk about my experience. No one's ever sat in my office for the experience I have and success I've had in terms of closing learning gaps. No governor that's in the country, I don't believe, that's opened up as many regional public schools as I have. And I'm responsible for. Just to give you a sense on the success of those schools and why I know that moving forward, working with all the parties, we're going to make some significant progress in the state. 3 out of the 10 top elementary schools, or middle schools in the state of Rhode Island are schools that I started. 3 of the 15 top elementary schools in the state of Rhode Island are schools that I started. Every one of them, they're the only ones on that list with more than a 50 or 60% premium reduced lunch. Just to give you an example on the RICAS scores alone, the last time we actually had RICAS before COVID. On the ELA, those schools outperformed the state by 10 points. On the math, they outperformed the state by 19 points.
Let me stop you there, Mr. McKee, if I could, because the question really, I understand you're saying you have a record.
No, I don't think I think it's what I bring to the table.
Okay.
See, history. I just want one more stat, and I'll be happy to explain how we're going to move forward and why we're not going to reset the wheel. Just on the peers alone, plus 20 on the ELA in those schools, plus 26 on the math scores. So I know that the students in this state can achieve. And I've had the experience to understand how to make it happen. So now, unfortunately, 2 years of COVID have made a difference because we made safety the top priority of our students in the state during that time frame, vaccinating every teacher, every worker, making sure we had masking policies. Now we get that open, we're in that spot where the commissioner has got a plan in place. We have been working on that. The plan is in education to invest about $500 million in the schools in the state of Rhode Island. $300 million on our public schools, $200 million on the universities, state universities, and those dollars are going to go right into this campus. Besides that, we have made sure that there's curriculum-based strategies that I'm sure that the commissioner is a lot more prepared to talk to them than I am. But I meet twice a week with the commissioner and the superintendent of schools in Providence. I am very confident that what I've been able to do, which is nationally recognized, we're going to be able to transfer that into our schools, and I'm very confident that's going to happen.
Ms. Kalus, you heard Mr. McKee saying he has a record of success in Cumberland, and the pandemic has put things on hold.
Not just Cumberland. These are regional schools in the state. Providence, North Providence, Cumberland, Lincoln, Pawtucket, Central Falls.
We now have a national record of trapping children in failing schools. That's what we have. And why would we trust you now when you failed a generation of children that have been trapped in failing schools, and you can't even ensure that children are able to get to school on buses? That is what has been happening the last few weeks. And I'll answer the question, but I don't think we can trust somebody who has failed a generation of children.
Well, that's not quite an answer, but
I will actually substantively answer it with policy. In the short term,
Ms. Kalus, what will you do differently?
Yes, in the short term, we cannot trap children in failing schools, which means that we need a mechanism of public school choice. So if your child is trapped in a failing school, you will be able to select a public school of your choice while we do the long-term work of education reform. The information in the RIPAC report that was cited is very similar to the steps that I laid out in my education plan. They almost match, and I'll go over what those are. We need to have high standards, which means that we need to end of the year high stakes testing and move to progress-based testing. We need to have accountability. We need to support our teachers by having high quality professional development. We need to pay our teachers more. We're not regionally competitive, and we have a hiring gap, which is in the RIPAC report as well. So we need to do that. There's more. We need to level the playing field, which means universal pre-K, and it also means a reform of the school funding formula, because that formula is not equitable, it is not fair, and it disproportionately impacts English as second language students and students in special education. So we need to fix that.
Mr. McKee, 30 seconds.
I'd love to spend the whole hour on this, because we don't spend enough time on it. And it would take me well over an hour to explain exactly what we've been doing and getting done. The funding formula, I commissioned that report, 2009. Before then, 80% of the school districts in the state of Rhode Island were underfunded. There were things that I put into that report in 2009 that are not done. We'll get to that. But we did do a lot by making it a fund student. Actually, I assigned people to Rhode to get that done. As far as so reports have been added for this period of time, we've been successful. I have thousands of kids in schools that are performing at significantly higher rates than other schools in the state of Rhode Island. And that's very transferable. The difference now is that we're going to do it with the districts in a way where tomorrow I'll have a meeting on higher ed.
I would hardly call.
Hang on, Ms. Kalus.
Yes.
We're going to move on.
Ms. Kalus, both of you say that you support school choice, but that can mean a lot of things. So starting with Ms. Kalus, how specifically would your plan work? If I'm a parent in Providence, will you guarantee that I could send my child to Barrington or East Greenwich? Could I go for free to a private school under your plan?
Yes, so that's a great question. In some instances, if you're a parent in Providence, you might be able to send your child outside of the county, which is what you're asking. School choice is something that people get afraid about because it's different, but it's been done around the country successfully, and there are a variety of different models. What I'm looking at is public school choice. So if your child is trapped in a failing or unsuitable school, you'll be able to pick a school of your choice. And it starts within the district, and if there are seats available, you can move your child. And there will be transportation provided, because if you don't provide transportation, it's not really access. Then we'll move within the county, and then we will move broader than that on a case-by-case basis.
Is this a lottery that determines who gets one of these seats?
The lottery is really a problem. Right now we have a waiting list for charter school students, and that is really picking winners and losers, and it is almost like winning the lottery with your education. That needs to stop. So we need more choice. That was also in the RIPAC report as well. So the reality is that I refuse to tell a 5-year-old that is in a failing school that they need to wait for 8 years until we do the long-term work of education reform, and we must find a way. And there are multiple models, and this has been done around the country. This is not something new, public school choice. What is unacceptable is the civil rights violations that we have in not providing equal access to education in this state, specifically in Providence and Central Falls and Woonsocket. We need to correct this, so we will figure out how to do it. There are models that work, but the excuses of it's too complicated, it's not too complicated. It just takes political will. And saying that you did something, you still haven't succeeded, Governor. It is still not there. What has happened with the funding formula is level funded. There was progress made, but it is not enough.
Mr. McKee, what do you say to that plan? Would that plan
Well,
work?
first of all, let's answer the question. I am for public schools. I've answered this question many times. We use the Merrill Academy as a vehicle to prove out that, kids that are coming from challenged families could outperform their peers by 20 points and 26 points. We're not talking about an experiment here. We have thousands of kids in these schools in the state of Rhode Island.
So you agree with me, you're for public school choice then now?
Well, you're following my lead.
Oh, great, so now we are going to have public school choice, even no matter who's elected. So that helps that 5-year-old. So I hope you will commit to doing that now. Let us help that 5-year-old who's trapped in a failing school.
Can I answer this?
Ms. Kalus, would you like Mr. McKee?
I mean, that was about a few minutes. I got about 20 seconds in so far. So the issue here is about education and not resetting the wheel right now. We're a few years into a process. For instance, 4 years ago, we aligned our testing with the MCASs. That was a really good thing to do, and I support testing. I support long-term testing because you need to know where you got to go, where you are and where you're going to go. So when we did that, to reinvent the wheel right now, that's what we do every single time there's a change in leadership. We're not going to do that. The commissioner has a good plan. We're going to follow it. She's in districts, resetting curriculum, setting standards that we have not had before, and we are going to achieve at levels because of that. If we reverse it and go backwards, we're just back to square one. It's another fake hustle effort. I'm not going to do fake hustle. I'm going to improve the school.
So you are for public school choice. So you agree?
Well, if you were from around here, you would know that I I've been nationally recognized.
Then I am trying to ask you to make a policy decision, and you're seeming like you're for school choice, but you're not. So are you or are you
Ms.
not?
McKee, 30 seconds.
What he just was.
Do you support what Ms. Kalus proposed? Yes or no?
Let me tell you, I already started off my comments. I've done more regionalizing in public schools.
Can you answer that question?
We're going to keep on doing the work that I've done because it's work.
Yes or no?
And regionalization and strategies is part of it because I've already done it.
Right now, the quality of your education is determined by your zip code.
Ms. Kalus has no experience on this.
The quality of your education right now is determined by your zip code. That is unacceptable. Some cities and towns have school choice and others do not.
In the school that I started, has Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, Cumberland, and Lincoln, mixed on income.
What is your
and they're doing
policy?
very, very well.
Let's not talk over one another because then the audience can't hear either one of you. Let's go to a question from Raymond Bakari.
Let's cool things down a bit. Thank you, Ian. Census debate is taking place at Rhode Island College. Let's discuss where you both stand on supporting public institutions of higher learning, specifically as we're facing issues such as declining enrollment. Starting with you, Mr. McKee, how would you address that?
Well, like I said, President Warner is going to do a good job rethinking Rhode Island College, and we're going to invest in our schools. We've got 170, almost $200 million into facilities into the budget right now on a base campus at URI. Work that's being done here at Rhode Island College, work that's being done at CCRI. I am going to invest in our state universities like they've never been invested before because this is where our economy is going to come from. And we want to make sure that schools that we operate on a state level prepare kids for good paying jobs.
How would that affect the enrollment numbers?
Well, if people know they're coming to a school that's going to get good paying jobs, they're going to enroll. And we're already seeing progress here at Rhode Island College. I know that the numbers are up just on the work that has been done in the last few months. So we know that we have this great institution here at Rhode Island College. You invest in facilities matter. You invest in curriculum, and you invest in curriculum that matters. For instance, here at Rhode Island College, what we're working on right now is a housing transition so that young kids that graduate as teachers or nurses, they'll have a transition right on campus for affordable housing, and then those teachers are going to be able to teach in Providence and fill our healthcare needs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKee.
Yes,
Ms. Kalus, we're going to go.
higher ed is a big deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in using public funds for public goods, which are public universities. So we can agree on that instead of spending public money towards a private project like a soccer stadium for a private interest or putting money into building luxury apartments. So in terms of public universities, I actually went to a public land grant university, University of Massachusetts, the land grant institution. And we must incentivize enrollment in public universities. One way that we can do it is we can find a way to reduce the cost of borrowing if you go to a public university. That can be the role of the state because we're incentivizing a certain level of behavior. So yes, we need to invest in our universities. We're under-investigated in higher ed. But we also can find ways to encourage students to choose public universities as an option.
So let me just also say my record here is really strong. Okay, so not only did I sign a college promise permanent for our community college, but also we're working here with the president on a scholarship strategy that actually is going to close some of the gaps on cost for the junior and the seniors here. Because one of the things that has hurt for enrollment here is the promise. So we got to find some replacement for that that actually makes sure that our Rhode Island College is competitive.
Just a quick follow-up, because the enrollment is just one of many topics we could talk about when it comes to the topic of higher education. Rhode Islanders are struggling with the burden of college debt. That number of people who are suffering with that debt is very high. I'll stick with you.
Well, the
Mr.
College
McKee.
Promise
What would you do to
the College Promise provides every student in the state of Rhode Island with free 2-year credits to move towards a junior and senior of college. So that's something that I think we all can be very proud of, and I was proud to continue that and make that permanent. I think that we continue to find ways to help and where the need where the need is. That's why I'm just saying we're going to create a program here at Rhode Island College. I'm going to fund it in the budget. We're going to also ask for the alumni and the endowment to help support it. But we're going to support students here because we need to educate our students here right in the state, and then we need to provide them a path to good jobs.
Ms.
Can
Kalus?
you ask me the question again?
Sure thing. What would you do
Yeah.
to help Rhode Islanders who are struggling with the burden of college debt?
Yeah, I know what that's like. I didn't come from anything. My husband is also the son of a Holocaust survivor, and we had $250,000 of student debt, and that felt crushing. It was a house to us. And we made different decisions in life because of the level of student debt that we had. I didn't have as much opportunity. My friends who had parents that could pay for their college, they could choose any job they wanted. Where I was always worried about choosing a job that would make sure that I could pay my student loans, and it just changes your perspective. It changes what your options are in life. So there are different things that we can do. We can incentivize public universities. We can also increase programs like dual enrollment, which is what I participated in high school, where you can take college classes during high school, and by the time you're done, you can end up with an associate's degree that then you can take with you and then turn it into a bachelor's degree. That reduces the cost of student loans. There are different things that we can do in that vein that will help.
Would you favor extending the Rhode Island Promise to the last 2 years?
Oh, yes, I absolutely. I am in favor. We do agree. I am in favor of extending that program. I also want to say that we need to invest in technical and professional training schools. And we need to value the trades and professional careers the same way that we value college. Because somehow we've said that one is more, and I was a generation where my parents thought that if somehow I didn't go to four-year university, they had failed me. And that is a narrative that must stop, because going into the trades or a professional career is just as valuable. And if we offer that opportunity in high school like Davies, where it's academic excellence and real world training, where students leave with high-paying jobs, that will help reduce the burden of student debt, because those children go straight into the workforce and they have great careers. That is a great option.
Thank you, Ms. Kalus.
Let's just stay on this for now, but we already have entry. We have kids that are in high school right now, attending CCRI and other universities.
We need more.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Ian?
Yes. Ms. Kalus, when we talk about the economy in Rhode Island, it's sometimes hard to tell whether the glass is half empty or half full. Your opponent talks about how unemployment in the state is at a historic low, but at the same time, the Federal Reserve of St. Louis reports that total non-farm employment hit a peak in February 2020 that has not been seen since. Yes, small business is vitally important here, but what would you do to create well-defined engines of job growth?
So first, I want to address the claim that everything is just fine here. I was talking to a business owner, and he had to shut down one of his shops because he couldn't find employees to work there. It wasn't unsuccessful, he just couldn't staff it. And families are struggling. I know what it's like. I have been through a period where I had so many bills that I had a stack and I didn't open them because I couldn't pay them, so like, what was the point anyway? And it is not easy right now. When I talk to people from around the state, what I hear is that it is just so hard to make it. So when you hear the governor say everything is great and everything is fine, I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. You are not alone. Rhode Islanders are struggling in this economy, and it is getting harder to make it. The idea that he says everything is fine while a lot of people are struggling, it leaves them alone in terms of what they are experiencing in the economy. We have a crisis right now, a crisis in affordability. So what we need to do is a few things. In the short term, we need to provide immediate relief. That comes in the form, and a very simple thing that I gave the governor is we had an electricity rate hike. A way to provide immediate relief, which deals with a regressive impact, is to suspend the hike on electricity to provide some immediate relief. That is within the governor's powers. So he should do that. That
The
helps.
governor's office says this would lead to protracted litigation.
I mean, that's not true. We provided the documentation for him. I suggested that he read it. And that the case is very clear. So,
Mr. McKee?
Well, first of all, that statute was not passed for pricing, it was passed for supply during, which I remember, it was certainly struggled.
it was passed for a supply disruption, which is exactly what we had.
Yes, let me
Okay.
answer, please.
So, and hey, the governor does not have the ability to just walk in and do anything they want, right? So, and there is implications. First of all, the statute was not designed for that. It was for supply. It was very clear what it was for, right? So we are going to do what we're doing, which is providing $100 million or more of relief right now. We're lowering energy costs for those who are most at risk. The $39,000 over $5.3 million. $32 million is going to go broadly out to all the ratepayers in the state of Rhode Island. 4% of the tax that's on there is going to be relieved for months during the winter session. So we are doing what we should be doing. We're not going to get involved in a wild goose chase that bears no merit. And we're not going to be chasing this thing for months when we have the problem with it right now.
Mr. McKee, have you cherry-picked data to portray an overly rosy picture of Rhode Island's economy?
No, absolutely
Can I
not.
answer the question
Absolutely not.
related to the
Absolutely not.
electricity? I mean, he's not telling the truth.
Hang on for 1 second, Mr. McKee.
Yeah, so no. Look, if it's raining, I'm going to tell you it's raining. But when the sun's shining, I'm going to tell you the sun's shining. If we had the highest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Rhode Island, that would be repeated every single day. We have the lowest unemployment rate right now.
Does that really tell the story?
Let's talk about this. If we had the slowest improving economy coming out of the pandemic, that would be mentioned every single day. We have the fastest growing recovering economy in the Northeast, and we have the second in the country.
Ms. Davis, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd like to read some statistics. We're the 45th worst state in the country to do business in. We're the 42nd in terms of the highest cost of living. We have the 41st worst overall economy. We are the 44th least affordable place for seniors to retire. We are the 45th in terms of property tax burden. We are the 49th in terms of GDP growth. Not everything is not fine. Rhode Island has a history of being first in and last out of a recession. And I will tell you, do not listen to what he is saying if you are struggling, because you are not alone.
Let me tell you, we are not first in and last out of this economic downturn. It took 6 years to get out of that when the real estate crisis came. During my administration, we are leading the Northeast. We're not the first in and last out. And the investments that we're making in the budget, and investing in the largest surplus that the state has ever had, in universities, in offshore wind, in projects in Pawtucket, in projects in Providence, in projects in Quonset, in projects in the fisheries down in Galilee. This is going to provide jobs. And the best remedy to an economy is providing good paying jobs. Because we're those people who have the jobs spent by their pizzas right with the local businesses. I'm a local small business. I struggled through the banking crisis dramatically. I understand what it's like to potentially lose your home. I understand what it's like to have people who work for you not have a job. I've struggled through the internet bubble as well. And I struggled during the...
Speak on the economy,
Yes,
a different subject. Ms. Kalus, you mentioned the Pawtucket Soccer Stadium. We're clear that you do not support the current deal to build and finance that project. But if you were elected, you would take office and the project would already be partially underway.
That's not true.
At that point, would you attempt to cut the project off and try to prevent any state funding and risk potentially a hole in the ground, or would you go ahead with a project you don't support?
Hi. I hear a lot of him saying that he's giving money, and that is something that career politicians do. They just give your taxpayer dollars away. What I don't hear a lot of is looking for a return on investment. What are we getting back? And what are we investing in terms of the future of the state? The soccer stadium is using public money for a private good, a private project that will not result in something that everybody in the state can use. Workers should be building things with their hands with public money that their children can use in the future, not for private businesses. And when we move forward with this, let's say the stadium happens, I would hope that it would align more with what originally the stadium was supposed to do.
You could play, if you were elected, what would you do? You take over in January, construction is underway, would you tell them, no, we're not giving you public dollars, or would you go ahead with it?
Is construction on, you think it'll be underway in January? I've been in a lot of construction projects in my life in private business. It never really works out that way. I think it depends on what it is, and I think that the reality is that this was a dirty backroom deal, and that should not be rewarded, and it's your taxpayer dollars. I think that's not me. I can read you what Mike McNally said about it if you'd like to hear what they said about this deal.
Let's let the governor defend the
Yeah, so let's, we're talking about policy here, and if you want to, bring it down to a level of accusations, then go right ahead. Bring it down to the mud if you want. What we're doing in the state of Rhode Island right now is we're investing in the future. So what we're doing in Pawtucket, which is going to have housing, it's going to have retail, it's going to have a bridge that's going to connect us like the city of Providence. It's going to be good for the jobs at the moment and long-term growth around the Pawtucket area. I'm not turning my back on the city of Pawtucket, but it's more than that. And I just described it. It's investing in the fisheries in Galilee, millions of public dollars. Who's going to benefit from that? The businesses. It's millions of dollars being invested in Quonset right now. Millions of dollars in downtown Providence in the Superman building to put the lights on there. And 1,300 people are going to work there. We're doing the same thing in Johnston with Amazon. 1,200 jobs going to be realized. 800 jobs in Fidelity right now. We are investing dollars today that are going to pay dividends in the future. That's a policy issue, and we don't believe it. Then you're going to find out because we're going to make it happen as I'm going.
Mike McNally, I'd like to read this to respond, because we were talking about the soccer stadium. So what he said is, I can confirm that McKee's statement that Tidewater has more protections than any other commerce deal is absolutely false. It has maybe, I have to get this right, quote, the least protections. For anyone interested, I can provide details. There is no protection against excessive profit. Typical commerce deals have a profit waterfall provision which pays the state back. Tidewater also has no protections should fortuitous fail after the stadium opens. We were also never told who the investors are.
And let's remember the source on that, because somebody was working for my opponent in the last campaign. No public dollars are going to be put into that project.
This is a respected business leader.
Until it's complete.
He said,
no public dollars. And there are provisions for 30-year types of occupancy there to make sure that soccer program is there. And there are penalties associated with that. And when we're done with the, making sure the provisions are there, there's something the city of Pawtucket wanted. They're putting $10 million of their dollars into that project because they believe in it. We're completing a train station in Pawtucket right now. Good growth is happening, retail growth, good investment is being made. The same thing's going to happen here. But we're going to duplicate it in multiple locations around the state. That's what the Rhode Island 2030 plan is about. Pick it up, read it. It's a plan, and it's a long-term 10-year plan for the state of Rhode Island.
Okay, we're moving on. You're listening to our 2022 Gubernatorial Candidates Forum hosted by the Public's Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We're broadcasting live from Rhode Island College on 89.3 FM and streaming through the Providence Journal. We asked Rhode Islanders to submit questions for the candidates. Here's one of the many questions we got from Greg Jarrett.
Hello, my name is Greg Garrett. I live in Providence, and this is my question for the people running for governor of Rhode Island. Specifically, in regards to cars and the production of electricity, what concrete proposals are you supporting to end the use of fossil fuels in Rhode Island by 2035?
Mr. McKee, did you hear that okay?
Yeah, I did. It's a good question. While I'm at it, you mentioned cars. Let's say we also eliminated the car tax for every Rhode Island and every small business in the state of Rhode Island. In my spare time. So the other thing on that, what he's talking about is an important thing. We have made a commitment to clean energy. I put in legislation that's going to create 1,000 kilowatts of energy offshore. Going to electrify 450,000 homes. I think it's over $25 million into charging stations that are already under the way. We put incentives in to purchase electric vehicles as well. We are going to lead the country. I signed legislation by 2033 that we will be 100% on renewable energy relative to utilities and our energy costs, as well as sign an act on climate that's going to set guidelines for 2030, 40, and 50 to make sure we're reducing the carbon gas, which is exactly what that question was about. Reducing carbon gas through electrifying vehicles, as well as I would say that we're also investing in millions of dollars in electrified buses. I took one of them to the beach on Beach Day a few months back, about a month and a half back. So we are doing the work. That's the record. That's the record that my opponent denies.
Ms. Kalus, your response to the same question.
So I think that we can all agree that it's our obligation to protect the future of the state and the world. And how we get there is very important, because if we don't take the correct steps in the correct order and we don't have a plan that can actually be executed, we're not going to get anywhere. And we really need to invest in our infrastructure. We can learn from what works, but we can also learn from places where there have been problems. So what I would not like to happen is to try to have everybody move to electric cars and then not have the grid to support it. So I would invest in grid storage. I would invest in the hard infrastructure around that. We would create, you could do like small areas that, like a hospital complex that has a smaller grid as well that is self-contained. So in order for us to be successful in moving to an electric or the technology of the future, we need to have the underlying infrastructure to support it, because if we don't and we try to move too quickly, it'll fail and people will give up too early. So we need to do the hard work. It's not glamorous work. Grid storage, who wants to talk about grid storage? But it's really important. It's really important infrastructure work. And we got to do it, because I want to believe that we will have a cleaner environment for our kids and that we will be able to protect the future.
We have another community question. This is from Angie Gonzalez.
Hi, my name is Angie Gonzalez, and I reside in Providence, Rhode Island. And my question for the candidate is, how will you be more integrated in the urban communities? And how will you be able to support them?
Scales?
All right, I mean, I already have a reputation for being everywhere. I think being present is important, and trying to be available is something that I will commit to do. It's not just about running a campaign, it's about actually caring about being in the community. So I will continue to do that and not prioritize one community after the other. Also, ensuring that we deal with the issues of different communities is something that you'll get. I hear about Providence, I think about the school system. And I think about the hard work that we need to do, especially because there is a disparate impact in terms of our failure to fix that school system on Black and brown communities. And we need to address it. And you need a governor who's willing to do the hard work, get involved. Being the governor of Rhode Island is not like being the governor of California when the governor says, I'm going to plan to have a plan. If the buses aren't working when I am governor and kids cannot get to school, I will be involved. That is the opportunity of being a governor of a small state, is you get to get involved in the solutions to the problems. So that is what you will see with me, is a governor that really wants to know the details, is interested in the policy work, and will also be there to demand solutions to problems. Not hope that when kids can't get to school with the ripped busing crisis, hope that that agency has a plan to have a plan. That is what we've seen from the governor. And again, we are having issues getting kids to school. This is a state where you can solve that problem. We're not talking about...
Mr. McKee.
I love to answer the young lady's question. About time we actually had a question in these forums about equity. About time. About time.
Here we go.
The young lady was talking about what we're going to do with the community in Providence, which is a heavily minority community. About time we talked about that. You know, well before I was a governor, I was a coach boys and girls, all different age groups, all different economics, and learned a lot. And I've transferred that to my work. So what I did not only was help and get shots in the arms, first in the country, by the way, can't deny that. Opening the economy, first in the Northeast, can't deny that. Lower the unemployment, best in the state's history, yes. But the fourth piece is equity. And that's what we're working on every single day. On the equity, this is an important point, because that's what the question was about. So on the equity, we've restaffed our Office of Equity and Diversity, which is supposed to be giving at least 10% of the state contracts to equity, to minority-owned and women-owned businesses. It's never been done. We've already cracked the ceiling. It's at 16%. 16%. If people are watching this at home, that's important to them. Because there's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. I say it once, I've said it 150, maybe 500 times. And each community that makes up those communities are important. That's why there's a flag for every community in the State House in the Rotunda, because I believe that's true. And every single community that makes up our communities, my goal is to raise their incomes. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
So he may have missed the point. I was talking about equity. There was a disparate impact in terms of who was able to get to school and not, and what community was impacted by that. You should not get extra credit for making sure that we fulfill our minority women contracting obligations, and that is simply the law. You don't get extra credit for following the law. That is the law. You've been in government for a long time.
I'm so happy we're able to talk about tonight. For those who are listening at home, and more so than what I'm hearing in the audience right now. But that's the record. That's the record. And we've got a long way to go, but we're going to get there.
Stop you there. We've got a lot of issues and limited time. We're going to go to a lightning round of questions. Looking for a very brief yes or no answer. Do you support undoing the Carcieri era tax cut for the richest Rhode Islanders, Mr. McKee?
I'm not going to touch any of the taxes right now. We're running the largest surpluses we've ever had. This is the time to invest in our economy. That's our money. And that's the way that we're going to make sure we grow it. If there's a need at some point in time, we'll do it.
No.
But at this point in time, there's no need to tax.
My economic plan suggests that we cut taxes for those making under $150,000 a year and have no taxes for those that are 50. It is, if you look at my plan, it is actually a much more progressive plan because I get rid of taxes for people making under $50,000 a year, which helps those on fixed incomes. And I also look at another regressive tax, which is the sales tax. So my tax plan and structure is actually far more progressive in terms of what it does and who it helps. So I am in favor of giving relief to Rhode Islanders who have been hurt the most by the 10% tax that has been imposed on us by inflation. I want to provide immediate relief.
Voters in Massachusetts this year will vote on whether undocumented immigrants should be able to get a legal driving credential. Should Rhode Islanders get a vote on that, Ms. Kalus?
This law, should they get a vote on the ability for, well, I mean, I think that this is easy law. In Massachusetts, Governor Baker came up with a proposal to do this, and his proposal made sure that as long as there was proper consulate documentation and the permit didn't look like a license that could be mistaken for voting, it was fine.
Mr. McKee?
We've already done it.
Yeah, that's been done.
So we've already passed that, and I was the one who made sure that it got over the finish line. Because the reason you want it, it's an economic issue. It gets people to jobs. It gets young people and their families to school, and it gets them to the local supermarket to make sure that they can purchase.
Okay, it's called a lightning round, Mr. McKee. Thank you.
That's fair.
Please finish this sentence. The biggest factor holding Rhode Island back from achieving its economic potential, Mr. McKee, is what?
Right now, we're moving in that direction in a very solid way. I think what we need to do is to have a plan, file that plan, the Rhode Island 2030 plan, by the way, that was put together on national renowned economics and economists. It is so. Yes, follow the 2030 plan. That's the answer. Housing, health, education, transportation, infrastructure. It's all in that plan.
Thank you.
You want to start the sentence again, because that was a long one.
Sure. The question is the single biggest factor holding back Rhode Island from achieving its economic potential is?
We are not competitive, and we need new leadership.
Yes.
provide free lunch to all students? Yes or no?
Can I start?
Yes. Mr. McKee.
Yeah, that option should be provided.
Should the DMV censor license plates it feels are in bad taste? Yes or no? Mr. McKee.
Well, I think that's a legal question. I think that takes more than a yes or no. So
Well, what do you think?
I don't particularly like license plates that might have all the language on them, so we'll try to figure out how to make that.
I'm
It's not good
generally
for our
not
kids
for
to see that.
censorship, so and also who decides what is good taste and what is bad is sort of subjective. As long as it's not vulgar, I would say we should not censor anything.
I believe Ms. Kalus.
I couldn't hear you.
Should Rip the buses be free to ride?
I think for seniors, yes.
How about for everyone?
Probably not for everybody, but we should make sure that the rates are affordable so that we provide public transportation that allows for accessing opportunities.
Mr. McKee.
In certain areas, I think it should be, especially in some of the urban areas. We're doing that in Center Falls right now. We're doing it in other communities. So I think that there's a value to make sure that you adjust it based on the circumstances, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. McKee, do you support or oppose line item veto power for the governor?
I
Support or oppose?
I support it.
Ms. Kalus?
Support it.
Sticking with you, Ms. Kalus, do you support term limits for members of the General Assembly, and if yes, how many?
Yes, I'm not sure how many terms we would do. Maybe after a few terms, I think it's time for you to do something else.
So no specific number?
No specific number yet.
Mr. McKee?
I think that you're seeing that on the municipal level with their councils right now. I think that
It's a yes or no question.
Well, I think it depends on what the yes and no is, right? I don't
Yes
know
or
how
no
long
for
it is.
term limits for members of the
Yes,
General Assembly?
He doesn't know how to understand.
Yes.
should look into it, yes. I don't know how many, is it 5 years, 10 years?
We both agree, we don't know how many.
So yes, I think it's worth looking into.
Mr. McKee, like a lot of Democrats, you're focusing a lot of attention on the abortion issue, but back in 2018, in an interview with Republic's Radio, you questioned the need for a state-based abortion law, and you didn't think the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Was it naive to hold that view?
You know, I always supported it. I didn't believe what happened this summer, and that happened through the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and along with Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett.
But you questioned the need for it back in 2018.
By July of 2018, I had put a press release on right after Kavanaugh got appointed to say, there's a red flag here, we need to be concerned about it. And that did happen. And so, yes, that issue is an important issue because I am pro-choice. My opponent is no choice.
Ms. Kalus,
Not true.
hang on, Ms. Kalus. We've heard you say, you describe yourself as pro-life. You oppose extending abortion coverage to women on Medicaid and the state employee health plan. You've talked about how you had difficult pregnancies, and that undergirds your view. But does this show that even in Rhode Island, a state with its own law protecting abortion rights, that it's poor women who will bear the brunt of the movement against abortion rights in the United States?
I am going to make sure that I am perfectly clear. The right to an abortion was codified in state law in 2019. I believe that the people spoke through their elected officials.
Okay, that's really not the question.
I'm answering it. Stick with me. But like a majority of Rhode Islanders, I do not support late-term or publicly funded abortion. And when we talk about my feelings in being pro-life, I've said that I am pro-life because of my personal experience with my children. However, the conflation of my ability, which is happening by McKee, of my ability to uphold the law while I have a personal opinion as a woman is insulting.
Let's talk about my question, not about Mr. McKee. The question is whether poor women in Rhode Island, not everyone can afford medical care. Will poor women bear the brunt if this abortion coverage is not extended to them?
Poor women are bearing the brunt of a foster system that is broken, by an education system that is broken. If you want to talk about health equity and health equity, we should talk about a broader systemic failure by his administration. And so we can't have equity in one way and not in another when we talk about medical equity. But I will say,
clear, EACA Ms. Kalus is going to veto that budget. She does not support it for the women that are on Medicaid and also state workers.
Mr. McKee, let me just offer a brief follow-up. There's doubt about whether there will be enough votes in the House of Representatives to pass the EACA. What will you do if that vote does not move forward in the House?
I don't have any doubts on that.
You
Just
don't?
like the gun legislation that I stepped in and asked the Speaker
Yeah,
of
you
the Senate
stepped right in.
to get my desk, and we worked on that. And it's keeping people safer in the state of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So just like that, I believe that that's going to happen. And I believe that I'm going to be working with the Senate President and the Speaker in a way that is very collaborative, and I believe that that bill will get to my desk.
I'm going to ask each of you about something that hasn't quite gone the way you hoped or planned. It started with Mr. McKee. The truck toll lawsuit was successful. Court ruled it was unconstitutional. You have decided to appeal. Is that throwing good money after bad and wasting taxpayer dollars that should just be written off at this point?
No, it's not. Right now, I think that is the prudent thing to do is to appeal that. And as we build the case, which I believe we do have one, then we'll see where it brings us. But also, I want to make that very clear as you're talking about this, right? We are not going to tax cars. We're not going to toll cars, and we're not going to toll any additional trucks. So, on the merit of what was passed in the General Assembly, we'll argue that, and then we'll determine where we go from there. I will reopen the budget this year with $30 million of lost revenue, and ask the General Assembly to fill that with the surplus, the excess surplus dollars that came in at $200 million, by the way, to make sure we keep our infrastructure going. $91 million in roads are going. This is important to your question, why we pursue it, right? $500 million in road construction, $100 million of the surplus we applied for $400 million of infrastructure money from the federal government. We're going to do $500 million. This is the record. This is my record. $100 million improvements going on right now, $500 million there. We're down to 17% of our bridges that are somewhat in jeopardy. We'll be down to 10% of those in 3 years. We're not going to abandon.
Ms. Kalus, what's your response?
Yeah, I mean, it's bad law, and he's going to tax or toll cars. And if he's not, I think that he needs to take down the gantries. He also, what I would like him to say, I would say you're going to appeal it, something that was unconstitutional, on what basis? On what basis?
I'll
You answer?
You're the governor.
You want to answer her?
I don't think either one of us is an attorney. I will base that on what the attorneys are telling us.
Do you know which clauses of the Constitution it was?
Right now, we will appeal. We're going to keep that program going because that infrastructure is...
With all due respect, you're the governor. If you're appealing it, you should know on what basis you're appealing an unconstitutional law.
Left board in 21, you were fighting with Monroe County about rental violations with your property, and accusing officials there of having retaliatory motives against you. Within a year, here in Rhode Island, you were fighting with the Department of Health over your contract, accusing them of wrongdoing. Is it fair to say that this is a pattern, that you don't get along with people who don't give you your way?
No. What I would say is what is a pattern is I will fight for what is right every single time. I am not afraid to come to the house and fight for the working people. That is what I did in New York County. I was fighting for working people after a hurricane. County officials had the nerve to try to charge building permit fees on insurance money for hurricane victims, similar to him taxing PPP money for business owners. To ensure that government that are repressive and hurt working people will be stopped. And
But that wasn't what the fight over the officials was. They accused you of violating the laws about short-term rentals, which is a big issue here.
Well,
so why did you break?
You asked about why I talked about retaliation. So within a week of me being very public and open with a house that was not available because it was really destroyed by a hurricane, all of a sudden that happened. And by the way, those officials knew that the house was not actually there because they inspected it, because that's what they do after a hurricane with FEMA. So they knew. The other thing is, no, I would say that we need a leader. Somebody that will fight for what is right, somebody that will stand up for things that they see are wrong, especially if the people that are being impacted do not come from a place of privilege and cannot always think
What do you
themselves.
see in her?
So what I say is, I'm glad you brought up the point, because the reason that Ms. Kalus came to the state of Rhode Island was because of money. And she...
I bailed you out.
And she
You were in March, you hired me in April. It was the best decision you've made.
Kalus made herself more money in a week than an average Rhode Island makes in a year. That is the truth. More money in a week than the average Rhode Island makes in a year.
I
She made her money.
Let's talk Leah Board for a moment. Let's talk Leah Board.
She registered to vote, and she declared that.
Thank you,
She's a good business.
Moving on to Leah Board, for those unfamiliar, that is an acronym for the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. Starting with you, Ms. Kalus, should Leah Board be repealed, reformed, or stay the same?
I think it can be reformed.
Any specifics?
I think being more inclusive in terms of who's on the hearing and how long an officer can be suspended for would be important. The other thing that I think is important is making sure that police chiefs be a little bit more open in their communication, because sometimes being silent is like being complicit, and I think we need to improve community relations in that way.
Mr. McKee?
I think you need to connect the community and the policing more, the policing and the communities more. I've been very, very clear on that. And I think that, yeah, the makeup of the committee is restrictive as it is right now, as well as the number of days of suspension. So it is open for reform, and I think you're going to get there this year.
Mr. McKee, the state has lacked a strategy for decades when it comes to the hospital landscape, with both Lifespan and Care New England facing financial questions. How should the state go about maintaining cost control and preserving quality care for patients?
Well, I think that that it's important that we continue to have good health care. That's why we invested hundreds of millions of dollars, not only in the workers, but also in the institutions themselves, to make sure that we got through the pandemic. Number one was to make sure that they got through. This year, we have put into the budget a line item that is assembling a group of people in the healthcare industry, along with people that are impacted by the healthcare, to help contain and lower the cost. So we have to kind of figure out a way to contain and lower the cost, and at the same time understand...
How would you do that?
Well, one thing we're doing right now, we've upped the reimbursement rates considerably, right? And so we have to make sure that we have the doctors here to do it. We did it for the dentists this year. We'll be doing it for other medical, professions, in the budget. So what you're going to do is you incentivize to make sure that we have good doctors, qualified doctors here. You incentivize them to be here just like anything else. Pay doesn't matter. And also you're going to make sure that we keep the health insurances honest relative to any level of increases. And that particular study that's going to go on, which I'm going to pay close attention to, make sure that we contain the costs, make sure that we invest in the physicians that actually provide the service, and make sure that we're talking to the hospital leadership themselves. And I believe that we should be having a nonprofit that comes in there as well, which I think is very important to the workforce and is also for longevity in the state of Rhode Island.
Ms. Kalus, your response to the same question.
As somebody that had to leave Rhode Island, my husband is a physician at Hasbro, Rhode Island Hospital, and chances are in the 90s or 2000s, you had skin cancer on your face or had a child with cleft lip or palate. My husband's name was on your chart, or could have been on your chart. And we have failed to pay physicians in a way where they can stay. We are ranked 50th in the country, or last in the country, for practicing medicine. So we need to change that. What I see from Dan McKee is the continuation of No Plan Dan. That is not a plan to get us out there. It is, because I will tell you there is not a substantive policy conversation. What we need to be able to do is we need to be able to deliver high-value, low-cost healthcare. The way that we do that is by increasing competition. So we can get rid of anti-competitive practices such as certificate of need laws, which basically regulate the ability to do healthcare like a utility, which it is not. At this point, that will encourage more competition. We do need to support physicians that are independent, because that is the basis of having a thriving medical community. So we can do those things. Also, if we make it easier to practice medicine in the state by offering compact licensing, that would be another way to encourage nurses and providers to come here. It's easier to start a practice here. And then if you can make it here. I know what it's like to not be able to make it here as a provider, wanting to provide for the most vulnerable members of the community community. We could not do it as an independent practitioner. We did it somewhere else, and then we came back, but it's the same problem and the same career politicians that do not have a plan and do not deliver results.
Thank you, Ms. Kalus. Brief response, Mr. McKee.
I gave my answer. We're going to work our way through it. And by the way, in terms of plan, please go to ri2030.com. That was hundreds of hours of time with the highest level of professionals, both inside and outside the state, talking about healthcare, talking about infrastructure, talking about transportation, talking about education. And we're going to lay it, that's going to be the roadmap for the state of Rhode Island. It was the roadmap for the budget that I passed this year. It will be the roadmap for the budget I passed in this next session.
It is now time for closing statements from our candidates. Let's start with Ashley Kalus. You have 90 seconds.
Tonight, you heard two very stark contrasts for the future of Rhode Island. Dan McKee represents the failed policies of the past: corruption, insider deals, abuse of power, and incompetence. It is time to turn the page and look to the future. Food prices are soaring, electric and gas bills are through the roof, and the dream of owning a home is out of reach for many. Rhode Island must now choose a path. Do we continue with our constant excuses, or do we fix our problems? Do we harp upon our failures, or do we build upon our strengths? Do we continue old partisan battles, or do we band together for all of Rhode Island? We have a once-in-a-life opportunity to change course. And if we have the political will, this will be a time of unparalleled opportunity for Rhode Island. We are running a campaign of vision and substance, a competition of ideas and policies, and this is the time right now to write the greatest chapter in Rhode Island's history. My administration will reform our broken education system to ensure that no child is trapped in a failing school. I will lower the income and sales tax because I believe that you best know how to spend your money. I will grow the economy so that we can ensure that everyone has access to high-paying careers. I will use public money for public projects, not corporate welfare like soccer stadiums. And I will build 80,000 housing units to combat soaring rents. And I will roll back the 47% electric rate hike because no Rhode Islander should be stuck footing the bill for the current governor's inaction. We can and must do better as a state. I'm Ashley Kalus, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. McKee, you have 90 seconds.
Roll the way that the tickets were distributed tonight.
No, the people that showed
You need to retire, McKee. Please show some respect.
You don't respect the nurses.
All right, Governor, please.
I'd like to thank the Providence Journal and Public Radio for hosting the debate tonight. I'd like to thank Rhode Island College as well. My wife Susan and I grew up in Incumbent. We went to public schools together. Wife is a teacher. Our kids went to public schools. We started a business after college. I had a career well before I was in government. Started a business, raised our family, volunteered in the Boys and Girls Club, president of the club, started the endowment fund, invested in our communities. Having served as your governor in the last year, coming in on the state of emergency like the state has never seen before, we've delivered on day one. We're the best vaccinated state in the country. We were one of the highest death rates in the country when I became governor. We made that a priority. We raised the unemployment lowest in the country, lowest in the state's history. Rhode Island has momentum, and we're not going to give it up. I want to thank those who supported us during the pandemic. I want to thank the voters who have voted for me in the past. And I ask them to help us keep this momentum going like the state has never seen before on November 8th and prior to November 8th by voting.
Thank you, Ms. McKee. That's time. I'd like to thank the candidates, Governor McKee and Republican challenger Ashley Kalus. Thank you to the panel, Patrick Anderson and Raymond McCarty. Thank you to our audience. Now please applaud your candidates. Candidate form sponsored by the Public Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We'll be back shortly with the three other candidates. Good job, Ashley. Independents, Zach Hurwitz, Paul Rianna,
Folks, we're just going to leave this running. I guess it's probably about 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to go on with set 2. The people Dan McKee were afraid of debating. Libertarian and a handful of independents. Thank you. We'll be right back. What's that? It's on now. We're live streaming it, so it'll stay up on Facebook. Hey, buddy.
welcome back to the candidate forum in the race for governor of Rhode Island.
And we're back already.
Public Radio, Providence.
Hey, folks, there's more debate. Why don't you stay?
Because it's so partisan.
They're not gonna ask people to be quiet for these candidates?
There's more debate. Don't
Maybe
leave
they
yet.
should shut up.
This is what McKee wants.
Maybe they should shut up.
Go home, Pat. No.
We want to hear our candidate.
Come on.
Yep. I'll do it after the town. This thing, huh?
You. I want to thank McKee and Kalus for letting us debate with them. We appreciate it. That was actually sarcasm, by the way.
We knew that. We got it.
McKee's only been running for these for like a year, so what's another one?
I call into it about 6 times a week. My name's Pat.
From where?
Cumberland.
Yeah, I listen to you. Sal from Winneconne.
It's great to meet you, buddy.
Same here.
Oh, this is like when the Brady Bunch and the what was the other show? The Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family got together. Outstanding. We're live right now, so you and I will talk after, okay?
It's amazing sometimes we agree.
We agree more often than not.
We do.
We do. Folks, for those of you who stayed with us, thank you very much. We're going to be starting momentarily. So hang in there.
Back to a candidate forum in the race for governor of Rhode Island, co-sponsored by the Public Radio, Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. We're coming to you for a live audience here at Rhode Island College. We just heard from the Democratic and Republican candidates, but there are 3 others on the ballot also. In this portion of the event, we'll be in conversation with Independents Zach Hurwitz and Paul Rianna and Libertarian Elijah Gizzarelli. I'm Ian Donis, political reporter for the Public's Radio. I'll be joined in asking questions by Providence Journal State House reporter and student journalist at Rhode Island College, Raymond McKee. Let's start with Zach Hurwitz. You folks are trailing in the polls a little bit. What is your chief goal in running for governor? What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for having me here, even though it's a little bit past my bedtime.
Very good.
Overall, I want to improve Rhode Island and quality of life for as many Rhode Islanders as I can. This is a beautiful state. This is a very developed state, and we should be doing everything we can to make this a better place to live, to make this place more inviting, and overall make Rhode Island great. It really is an amazing place.
What is your overriding ambition for what you hope to accomplish with your run for governor?
I hope to win. I mean, look, I have no delusions about my chances in this race, right? I'm going up against Republicans and Democrats, and they get to make the rules. The table's tilted, right? I've been a Libertarian for 12 years. I've been working nationally in Joe Jorgensen's campaign, Adam Kokesh's campaign, several other campaigns. I know this isn't new, right? Just like as we see right now on the stage, that we're not getting a fair shake. And I appreciate you guys inviting us to the debate, as Channel 12 didn't, right? So that deserves a pat on the back, but it's still not right. Here's the thing. People are worried about wasting their vote on a third party. Rhode Island is run by Democrats. 20,000 people showed up to the Republican primary. 110,000 people showed up to the Democratic primary. Kalus isn't going to win. It's a wasted vote, right? What we can do in this election is get a third party recognized. The Libertarian Party is the third largest party in the nation. If we receive 5% of the vote, we will be recognized as a party. Right now, we are being forced by Democrats and Republicans to operate as a political pack. It ties our hands, and then we have to deal with things like this. So that's my goal.
Thank you. Paul Rianna, what is your goal for your campaign? What do you most want to accomplish?
Well, like everyone up here, our goal is to win. But, the media's been holding us back. We don't get equal coverage. We're shut out of debates, shut out of RIPAC interviews and forums. My goal is to represent Rhode Islanders, all Rhode Islanders, from South Providence to South County. I've never shied away from anything, as everyone knows on this stage and in the crowd. I fought for Rhode Islanders' freedoms tooth and nail, even risked my own job to fight for Rhode Islanders. I think all three of us deserve a spot on the stage with Kalus and McKee. We are not second-class citizens.
You heard what the governor said about truck tolls and why he's appealing the lawsuit. On to you guys. Mr. Gizzarelli, starting with you. Would you get rid of the truck tolls? Would you appeal them?
It's get rid of the truck tolls or force everybody to pay tolls to use Rhode Island roads. Get rid of the truck tolls.
And where does the government money to plug that gap?
I mean, look, you want to talk about the budget. Good luck finding it on Google, right? Good luck. They keep that very well hidden in the state. Transparency will be a #1 thing of my governorship. Anyway, we're spending money like crazy in different places. I would stop paying McKee's friends, and I'd use that money to fill those holes.
Mr. Rianna, what do you think about truck tolls?
Well, at the beginning of my campaign, I spoke out against truck tolls. And for the second part of you asking me what I would do to replace that money, well, first off, what I would do is actually look at the budget. Because the problem with Rhode Island is we don't have transparency. We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That's the problem we have in Rhode Island, a spending problem.
Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, yeah, first off, a judge ruled them as unconstitutional, and at the end of the day, we're putting millions of dollars trying to appeal the actual ruling, which is, quite the opposite of what the truck tolls were meant to do. So at the end of the day, I've worked with unions to figure out a way where we can get rid of them, and especially truck unions, because at the end, they're unconstitutional. There's nothing much more to say than that.
And how would you pay for it?
Well, going off of my opponents, I mean, we spend money like an insane amount, and at the end, we're putting money trying to defend it. I mean, maybe we can, use the money that we're trying to do to appeal the actual, ruling. Maybe we can actually put that toward it.
Mr. Hurwitz, what qualifies you to be governor?
I mean, that's a good question, but one thing that really qualifies me is that I care about Rhode Island. I care about each and every single one of its citizens. I am a Rhode Islander myself. My family's been here for generations, and I care about this state so much. I don't need political experience to run. I mean, a lot of people who ran, especially on the Democratic primary, didn't have political experience. So I don't see that me not having any experience in government disqualifies me from running.
Mr. Gizzarelli?
I mean, I have common sense, which we haven't seen a lot in Rhode Island politics. Outside of that, I've been a political activist for 12 years. I've traveled the country. I've worked on presidential campaigns. I was Joe Jorgensen's regional field director for the Mid-Atlantic region, which I believe is the most popular region that we had on the campaign. And guys, I'm not a corrupt insider, right? I didn't make money off of a sweetheart government contract and then spend that to buy a position as governor, and I didn't give her that money.
Mr. Rianna?
What makes me qualified to run for governor is actually I care for the people, and I prove that. I've shown how much I care for the healthcare workers and every individual Rhode Islander. I grew up in South Providence, so I know what it's like to grow up in the urban area. And let me tell you, the urban area is forgotten by the state of Rhode Island. The bus thing that's happened in Rhode has been happening since 2002. All of a sudden it's an issue. I used to have to take a bus to go to school at Hope High and have to go from Eddy Street to Broad Street, and then pray to God I caught bus 42. This has been an ongoing problem with RIPTA. It's not a leadership problem, it's a RIPTA problem and a union problem. That's the problem.
Thank you. We have some community questions, starting with one from Jim McKee.
Hello, I'm Jim McKee from Charlestown. Thank you for taking my question. Research shows COVID put a huge dent in the education of our youth. How would you support our primary and secondary school students to help them overcome this gap? Or do you expect them to catch up naturally?
Let's start with Mr. Rianna, please.
Well, as we all know, COVID has basically ruined the education system. They were doing distant learning, which wasn't working. People were basically suffering, mainly students from Providence. The best way to do it is by action. We have to get out there and find programs for these students. Not distance learning, not after school programs. We have to help these students work through their problems.
Thank you, Mr. Gizzarelli. Your plan to compensate for COVID learning loss.
COVID did not cause this problem. The government's reaction to COVID caused this problem. Okay? And as far as how to fix the problem, it's pretty easy, right? In Rhode Island, we spend over $20,000 per student per year. And that's not a real average, right? Because we're averaging kindergartners with high schoolers, right? $20,000 per student per year. Let's say that the average classroom size is 20, just so it makes the math easy. Every teacher in Rhode Island would love for their classroom to only have 20 students. If we gave each teacher $400,000 to educate 20 students a year, we would have the best, most robust education system in this country. Where is the rest of the money going? Teachers make $70,000. If you add up all their benefits, what's that, $130,000 at most? We have over $250 million unaccounted for. It's not going to the building, it's a government building. They aren't paying taxes on building there. It's a government building. How many janitors do you need? How many administrators per classroom? Not one. Maybe one administrator and one janitor per 10 classrooms. If you do basic math and apply common sense, the problem fixes itself.
Thank you. Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, I actually went through distance learning, through COVID learning in high school, and I can say it does not work. McKee has failed the school system as we know it, especially when it comes to K through 12. The actual proficiency has dropped. The RICAS scores were released. It's 33% proficiency in ELA and 20% in math. It's a horrible thing, and we need to improve upon that. We need to help teachers teach better. We need to have mental health resources so that they can teach students to the best of their abilities. We need mental health resources for students so they can learn to the best of their abilities, because at the end of the day, that's what it's really about. That's how we can take care of our students and our teachers.
Let's go to another community question. This one is from Tina Peterson.
Hello, my name is Tina Pedersen, and I would like to know how you're going to help small businesses become ADA compliant so they're accessible to all individuals in Rhode Island.
And we'll start off with Mr. Hurwitz.
Well, first off, I mean, 90% of businesses in Rhode Island are small businesses, and that's just an extremely big portion of it. I would definitely work with each and every single one of them individually to see what we can put in place to make sure that they're ADA compliant.
Mr. Gizzarelli?
We talk about the cost of living in this state being way too high, and then we ask questions like this. Listen, I have disabled friends. I hope that they can always find a place in order to shop and to interact with the community. But it's not something that the government should be doing. If you are a business owner and you want more customers, be ADA compliant. If you are not and you choose that, we're not going to put restrictions on your business that's going to force you out of business because you can't build a ramp. Okay? It's going to destroy the economy to push these people any further than they've already been pushed by the COVID lockdowns.
Mr. Rianna?
Well, I would speak to every small businesses and find out what they need, how to go about helping them, because like exactly Hurwitz said, 90% of businesses around are small businesses. And we have to find out how to help them, how to make them strive. Walmart had to shut down. No, Walmart didn't have to shut down during COVID. Target didn't have to shut down during COVID, but all the small businesses had to shut down during COVID, which made them take a major hit. And it is sad that certain businesses could stay open, but small businesses couldn't.
To improving public education in Rhode Island. It seems like the state's been spinning its wheels for a long time. Every now and then a new report comes out talking about how bad things are. What would you do differently?
Well, with public education, what's really wrong here? There's so much more than just education in the classroom. There's things going on at home, lack of resources within the school department. So we really have to look at the bigger picture. It's just not within the public schools. It's things that are going on at home. There's more than one solution to fixing the public school department.
If a lot of those issues are based at home, what is the role of the state in addressing that? Is there a role for the state?
There actually is. There's parents from the urban area who lack resources, from daycare to getting their child to school on time. Someone working 7 to 3 and a bus comes at 8 o'clock. It's hard to get your students to that bus. So we have to find ways to make it easier for the parents, which will make it less stressful for the child.
Thank you, Mr. Gizzarelli.
If you've watched any of my interviews or you ever hear me talk, I talk about education a lot. Education is one of my most important topics. And I will give credit where credit's due. My opponent, Ms. Kalus, she's good on school choice, right? We've seen Arizona just pass a landmark legislation with a voucher system. There are thousands and thousands of people being able to move their school district. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't realize this, but 88% of black students go to historically black schools. That means that even though we think of segregation happening 70 years ago, 60 years ago, our school system in America is still 88% segregated, right? It's unacceptable. There are plenty of students that are in these poor areas that would like to leave. And the way our laws are written, we are forcing them into these horrible institutions. We need to stop funding institutions and start funding students.
Thank you. Mr. Hurwitz?
Well, I myself actually used school choice to go to a school where I felt more comfortable. I mean, why shouldn't anyone else from any part of Rhode Island not actually use those tools and use the same tools that I did? I mean, I feel grateful. I think everyone else should use the same ideology that I have, that my original school wasn't good enough, wasn't the best fit for me, so I chose to go to a different school. I think that every single student in Rhode Island should have that ability, and on top of that, what the Rhode Island government can do to help students learn more is just provide them support. They do not have the correct support, especially when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the COVID delay. Anything that we can do to help them get back on their feet and get back to being good, prosperous students is something that I'm willing to go for. Thank you.
COVID's come up a couple times already, but it's still with us, and there could be a new pandemic on the way. We never know. If that does happen, if there is another really bad outbreak, what will you do to keep Rhode Islanders safe? Or is it everyone for themselves? And we'll start with Mr. Gizzarelli on this one.
Everyone for themselves. No, guys, come on, we're a community, right? And I thought a bunch of businesses did a great job by putting aside hours so elderly residents would be able to do their shopping, still stay socially distanced. Just because we don't believe that the government should do something about something doesn't mean that the community shouldn't do something about something. Everybody should make their own risk assessment and act accordingly. That means that if you have a business and you think it's better to shut down, shut down. If you don't think it, if you want to open your business and people want to come to your business, it is not the government's place to say no.
What would you do in the next pandemic differently from how it was handled?
Well, the first thing I would do is no mandates. The second thing I would do is not kill a healthcare system. I would not abandon our elderly in nursing homes. I would not abandon mental health patients in hospitals. We need staff. We had a staffing issue before the pandemic, and now we have a major staffing issue. I just got my job back at Fatima Hospital as a mental health worker, unvaccinated, I might add. And at the end of the day, there's still a staffing shortage. There's still people suffering in the mental health industry, and they're not getting the proper care and treatment they deserve. So one thing I would not do is mess with the health care system.
One thing I think Paul has definitely experienced during the COVID pandemic is the burden that COVID had on hospitals, on ERs. By investing more into community centers and even telemedicine, we're able to decrease the burden that is currently on hospitals, that was on hospitals during the peak of the pandemic. So when another pandemic comes and rolls around, we'll be able to fight through it and help our healthcare industry even more, and hopefully lay the burden off hospitals, because they really did take a beating during the last year.
It's time, I think, time for our closing statements from our candidates. Let's start with Mr. Hurwitz. You have 60 seconds.
Rhode Islanders are tired and fed up of our current government. Career politicians, millionaires, and power-hungry people have done nothing but bleed this state dry. I am not a career politician. I don't have endless amounts of cash. I have $3 in my wallet right now. I could care less about the power that comes with being a gubernatorial leader of Rhode Island. I am you. I'm you, the person watching. I am the average person fighting for my future, your family's future, and Rhode Island itself. I've got your back, and I hope you have mine come November 8th. Thank you so much.
Well, we all know what we've been through this past year as far as this thing shutting down, killing the healthcare system, and basically all of our lives ruined due to Governor McKee's tyrannical mandates. We have a tyrant running, and we have someone who claims to be a fighter. My question is, if they're really a fighter, why didn't they speak up against COVID mandates when they were making millions of dollars? That's my question. Also, if Governor McKee actually cared about the people of Rhode Island, why didn't he help the healthcare industry instead of ruining it? Yeah. Making people lose their livelihoods, people not being able to feed their families, and almost losing their homes because he made people lose their jobs. I'm asking for your vote November 8th. Thank you, and I appreciate you all.
You know, I heard Rhode Island needs a fighter, and I'm the only veteran in the race.
We appreciate your service.
Thank you so much. But seriously though, I didn't get to talk about the drug war, so I'm just going to do that now. Guys, Rhode Islanders spend over $70,000 a year per inmate to keep people in prison, right? We have people right now at the ACI that have never harmed anybody ever, and Rhode Islanders are paying for them to stay there. We are taking them out of their homes. We're taking them away from their mothers and fathers. We are taking them away from their sons and daughters, right? And then their families are getting on welfare, so more taxpayer dollars are going to it. We're over $70,000 per inmate. The average Rhode Islander makes $35,000 a year. How on earth is it twice as expensive to be an inmate in Rhode Island than it is to live the average lifestyle? That's insane.
Gizzarelli.
The drug war must end.
Thank you. Listening to this production of the Public Radio, the Providence Journal, and Rhode Island College. Our technical director is Jonathan Rosa. Engineers are Aaron Reed and Michael Kane. Our stage director is Nate Halda. Our community producers are Will Richmond and Maddie Mott. Our co-executive producers are Sally Isley, Whitman Littlefield, Aaron Dion, and David Ng. For Patrick Anderson and Raymond McRae, I'm Ian Goddess. And let's give a hand to Zach Hurwitz, Elijah Gizzarelli, and Paul Rianna.
Hello, hello.